So thank you everyone for joining us today for the Learning Together newsletter interview. And today we have Kim Wojciak with us from, from Life in Full. So Kim, if you could just give us a little bit of history about yourself. Who are you? How did you get into recreational therapy, and what led to the development of Life in Full?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Donnette, and everyone else at Connectability. I'm really excited to share with you a little bit about rec therapy today. So my name is Kim Wojciak, and I'm a private practice recreation therapist in the Greater Toronto area. And I own a private practice called Life in Full Recreation Therapy, as Donnette had mentioned. And my journey actually started somewhere very different. I originally worked in marketing and communications after university, and worked in that field for a good 4 or 5 years, and realized that, you know, I was missing some kind of fulfillment in my career. I really wanted to do something where I can make an impact on people directly. And so I started doing some volunteering and some job shadowing with different allied health professions, so some physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and of course, recreation therapists. And what I really was taken by with rec therapy is that you can, you know, work with someone on their healthcare journey and help them become as well as possible. But you do it by doing things that are fun and enjoyable. You know, doing really fun activities that help benefit the person, but are also really enjoyable for them. So I really loved that combination. And so I quit my job, went back to school, and kind of started my career from scratch in recreation therapy. And I worked in hospital and long-term care settings, as well as a little bit in the community as well, with a range of different individuals with different diagnoses and healthcare challenges. And I found where I really felt the most engaged and where I felt like I could do my best work is when I worked one-to-one with people. So that one-to-one individualized connection was really what I was seeking. And so I decided to kind of go off and start my own practice where I can do just that, work completely one-to-one with people, you know, meet them wherever they're at in their homes, in, you know, a group home setting, hospital setting, wherever. And just for that time I'm with that person, focus completely on them and do things that they want to do, that they, you know, that their goals say they should be doing, and just completely focus on that one person and their needs and their goals for the time I'm with them. And so that's how Life in Full started about 1.5 years ago. So I've been in private practice since then.
That sounds like a really amazing journey.
Oh, thank you.
So in regards to rec therapy itself, can you give us a little bit of an idea of what's the purpose behind it? Why is it important? How is it helpful for the individuals you support?
Sure. Yes, that's a great question. And I feel like rec therapy is a field that people don't know a ton about. I think a lot of folks might feel it's kind of a mix of physiotherapy. I don't know. And before I was in it, I really didn't have, you know, a fulsome grasp of what rec therapy actually entails. So I don't blame anyone for not knowing too much about it. But I'm glad to have opportunities like this to share what it really is. And really, rec therapy is, you know, a healthcare practice where we're helping people with some kind of barrier to their leisure participation, helping them make the most of their lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially. So really well-rounded approach. And my goal is really to infuse my clients' days with, you know, meaningful activities to help bring a little bit more purpose and joy to their lives, and to support them in working on their functional abilities and functional goals as well. And overall, to have fun. That's the main goal, to do things that are enjoyable. I think it's important and a field that should be more valued because it really does help cultivate purpose and meaning in a person's life. It's completely individualized, so Again, I work completely one-to-one with my clients, but you know, even when I was working in a setting where I had a large caseload, I still made sure to focus on each person and try to tailor things to their needs and their likes. It gives choice and independence. You know, so many times when you know, healthcare services are provided to people, a lot of times they don't have a lot of say in what goes on with their care. And in this case, it's all about them and what they want and what they desire to do. So they're really my bosses, if you could say. You know, they're the boss when I'm with them during that time. It's really up to them. So that's really important. And it's also very strength focused. That's really the core of it's my practice. Is I really try to focus on the person's strengths and the abilities that they do have remaining, instead of you know, focusing on the barriers or challenges that they may have, even if they are multiple and compounding. I think it's so important to focus on what the person is able to do and focus my care planning and my time with them around those strengths and abilities.
That sounds really great. I know even from where we are at Community Living Toronto, trying to provide services that really will improve the individual's lives are always really important. And it's great that you take their input into that and try to make the therapy really customized to themselves. It's really great.
Thank you.
Individual reaches out to you or a family in regards to looking for rec therapy. What's your process? How do you go about deciding what you're going to work on with them from start to end, essentially?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question too. Usually it starts, you know, somebody reaches out to me, however they hear about me. Typically it's through email. And if so, I really like to start with a phone call to get in touch and let them know a little bit about what I do and see if that suits and matches with what they're seeking for their loved one. Typically it is the loved ones or families of clients that reach out to me first. So I really try to get a sense of what they're looking for and, you know, if rec therapy is indeed that. And this is difficult during COVID times, and I really defer to the person's comfort level, but I really strive to set up an initial assessment meeting with that person and my potential client. And just again, further to make sure that we're a good fit for each other and that I'm what they're looking for and vice versa. And that the rapport is there. Again, during COVID times, that's a little more challenging, but I still try to offer that service. And the initial meeting and assessment is free of charge because it is really just a casual meet and greet and to see if we're a fit for each other. And then after that point, I provide an assessment document that I fill out with the loved ones. Because I work on my own and I don't have access to, you know, a hospital's data of the background of the person, I really have to do all the research and the homework myself to be able to work with them as safely and effectively as possible. So, you know, any allergies, diagnoses, all the stuff that would be essential for me to know to work with them safely. And then all the more fun stuff like, you know, their interests, their hobbies, perhaps some goals that their loved ones have for their involvement with rec therapy. And also if they're working with any other allied health professionals like physiotherapists, speech pathologists. You know, as much as I do work independently, I don't want to work in a silo and just have my own goals. I really like to know what other professionals are working on with that individual. So if, for example, they have a physiotherapy goal of, you know, strengthening their leg muscles or something like that, then, you know, if I'm doing physical activities with them from a leisure perspective, I want to try to make sure that we're working on that leg strengthening as well. So that's the assessment part. And then, you know, we schedule, set a schedule of sessions. Typically, the most I see a client currently is about 3 times a week for 1.5 hours each time. But I also see a client once a week for an hour. So it's completely dependent on their needs and their preferences, how much stimulation they're getting without me there, and what their needs are in that sense. And once, we've done a few sessions and developed some rapport, and I can get a better perspective of what they need and who they are, then I develop a really fulsome care plan for them, outlining goals of what we'll work on together, and some sample activities, and how we'll be moving forward together.
Perfect. So when you actually are working with an individual, what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's a great question too. It's really dependent on the person, which you could guess. So, rec therapy for one person might look completely different from recreation therapy with another person. I strive to always meet someone where they're at that day. So when I go see a client, whether that's in their home or wherever they are, it's so important for me to check in and see, what's their mood like today? How are they feeling? Are they anxious? Are they, restless? What are their needs from today's session? And really try to check in and be in the moment with them to see where they're at. And typically I will come with, activities planned for the day. But so often, you have to be so flexible because, people are people, and things can go so many different ways, and moods can shift and things can happen. So I have a lot of backup activities in my back pocket as well. But I do typically come prepared with a couple and, try to introduce those activities really enthusiastically. And one of the biggest tips I can give if, loved ones are trying to do some engaging activities or something stimulating with their loved one at home, is to really, just go all in. Even if it's a simple activity, you being enthusiastic about it and, committing to the activity, even if it's something as simple as, coloring together, makes such a big difference to the person that you're trying to engage. So I certainly do that. And in terms of activities we can do together, I have some clients that I do, adapted cooking and baking with because that was part of their life history. I've done ballroom dance lessons with another client that was particularly interested in that before COVID, of course, when dance studios were open. With, individuals who are having difficulties with communication and their functional abilities, who perhaps would require a little more simplistic or sensory-based activities, I'll do, try to introduce some sensory things. So I have some pieces here. So like, this is like a fuzzy little ball thing here. From the dollar store that I've just got, just to kind of engage their tactile senses.
Use those a lot for sure.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah.
you know all about that.
Yeah.
So it can look completely different for every person. I have a client that, again, before COVID, I took swimming at Variety Village, like therapeutic swim sessions. And with her, for the first half hour of our session, it was just talking through what we were going to do that day because she has very, very high anxiety. So she needs that time to process what to expect from our session together. Even if we've been going swimming for many weeks, she really needs that time for me to go through all the steps, how we're going to get there, what we're going to do when we arrive, that there's no pressure or expectations on her, just to really make her feel safe and confident in the outing. So, if someone were to walk in at that point, they just see us talking and getting prepped for the activity. But yes, it's very different for every person and their needs. Some people I have a hard time keeping up with. They're so energetic and so active, and others need just a lot more coaxing. So I try to meet them wherever they may be on that spectrum.
Perfect. In regards to the actual individuals you support, I don't know if we actually talked about it, but using rec therapy, is there any limitations with any of the individuals, or is there a specific group of individuals that you find have benefited more than others, or would you say that it's very universal and just it's really about finding that specific goal, that specific therapy that would really work the best for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's again dependent on the individual. But I mean, I've worked with a number of different demographics. So people with developmental disabilities, seniors with dementia and Alzheimer's, people with mood disorders, people with degenerative conditions like multiple sclerosis or Huntington's disease. So I found more than what kind of diagnosis they have. It was more the individual and their openness to doing things together and to participating in activity, and our rapport together, because that's really the most important thing for me, is to develop that rapport at the beginning and to establish trust in the therapeutic relationship. Because if we're doing something together, like going on a hike or going into the community when that's possible, or doing something more active or physically demanding like swimming or adaptive sports, there needs to be a high level of trust for them in me. And so that rapport is kind of the key to everything, I would say. And really also how their loved ones and their care team supports something like recreation therapy, if they see value in it, and then can support their loved one in that as well. But I've definitely seen benefits across a number of different demographics and a number of different diagnoses. I think when you're really, what I try to look for is something that lights someone's fire, really. And I think even if it's something really simplistic, I think everyone has something that makes them feel really sparked or really, really engaged or really in a sense of flow. It could be, cooking or baking, drawing or painting, or even, reading together or listening to music. So I think if I'm able to find that little, that spark and what really ignites them, then it can be very successful, for sure.
Amazing. So of course, we've mentioned COVID a few times, and definitely that's had an effect on a lot of people, and definitely the individuals we support, just because they don't have access to the community services and the places they used to access. Do you have any recommendations for families, just kind of some ideas of activities or tasks that they could potentially try to look at doing that will still provide that spark, that little bit of something to their family members or the individual they're caring for, but still give them a little bit of something even though they can't access the community in the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I put together a little list of different ideas depending on the interest of the person, and I completely agree. It's such a difficult time for so many folks, and having to stay at home makes things so challenging. So my heart goes out to them because it's so tough. I think for any of these that I mentioned, of course, it totally depends on the person that you're working with and their interests, whether it's safe for them to do within their interests and within their needs. So that's kind of my blanket preamble for them. It definitely has to be something they actually want to do. But what I find is, trial and error for sure. As long as it's safe, you won't really get a sense of what someone likes unless you try it. So don't be scared, especially, with this time we're spending so much time inside. Why not try a bunch of different things? And again, whatever you're doing, even if it's the most simple task or simple activities that you're introducing, try to be really in it and commit to it. I was introducing just a very simple clay molding activity with a client that I have who has very low vision. So she's not able to see very well. So traditional, painting or drawing as an art-based activity doesn't work for her as much anymore. So I was trying to focus on a strength that she has, and she has great fine motor skills and tactile senses. And I was kind of going into the activity thinking, well, this is really simple. I don't know if she'll really like it. We're just molding clay together. But then I really committed to it, and I tried to explain to her, to really take her time, to try to feel the clay and warm it in her hands, to try to visualize what kind of shape she's making, and to really be mindful in that moment. And the more I committed to the activity and kind of sold it to her, the more she was able to, let loose and just kind of be in the moment with this very simple activity, but it ended up being very engaging and fulfilling for her. So really just commit to it as well. But in terms of actual activities and examples, I always like to start with music, unless someone, is overstimulated by certain noises or music in general. Of course, that won't work. But I find most people have some kind of emotional connection to music. And if you know the type of music or the type of songs they like, even better. So it could be as simple as listening to music together, singing together, clapping to the beat. I've done some rhythm play with certain clients to see if they can follow along. So we'll do some chair dancing together, and I'll hold their hands and dance with them, and then kind of switch up the rhythm of my hands and see if they can follow along. Same with clapping and things like that. I have, some little musical instruments that I bring with me and try to engage clients that way. Don't be afraid of doing some hand-over-hand support. Most of my activities that I do start that way, supporting the client, just supporting with my hand on top of theirs and kind of modeling the motion, and then slowly letting go and seeing how they fare doing it on their own. But music, I would absolutely start with. I start my day with music too, and I think it's just such a great way to connect with someone on an emotional level. If the person would do well with headphones, you can always curate a playlist and kind of have them be really immersed in it with headphones on as well. A movement. I think any kind of movement or physical activity within their range of motion and their abilities is great. Something like just guided chair dancing is wonderful. There's great, seated exercises you can find on YouTube. Some wonderful seated chair yoga and dance exercises. You can do some guided seated exercises as well. So there's a lot you can do from a movement perspective. And I think a lot of people are, staying home and not doing as much movement as they can, and getting out into the world. So the more movement you can do at home, the better. If it's safe to go outside, I would definitely encourage that, even just for 5 minutes or so to get some fresh air. I know for some folks it's not possible or not safe, which I understand. But if it is, even to go out on a porch or a patio or somewhere to get a change of scenery, some fresh air and some sunshine would absolutely be recommended. I touched on the sensory items a little bit. So, if that's something that your loved one would respond well to try to guide them in some sensory exploration. There's a lot of kind of fidget blankets and fidget boards that I've seen a lot of lately. So, buttoning buttons and zipping zippers and winding yarn and things like that. Just kind of small activities that can get their fine motor skills moving and get them engaged. What else? Books. I mean, reading together is great. I have a couple clients that really like being read to and feel very calm and at ease when I read to them. Reading together perhaps as well. I definitely have some really nice picture books that I bring along with me as well. I have some clients that respond really well to. I have this book with beautiful pictures of babies and they really connect with the faces and the images. So whatever is up their alley, if they like nature photography, for example, going through those kind of things. engaging in the arts if possible as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, the molding clay example, there's so many things on Pinterest. It's, it can be overwhelming, but a lot of great examples of just really simple, fun art projects you can do at home. Finger painting is always great.
Mm-hmm.
Coloring pages. When I color with clients, I like to kind of, if they're wanting to color within the lines, then I support them by kind of blocking off sections with my finger, and then they're able to color within that space without going over with my
Mm-hmm.
fingers. Different things like that. So I would absolutely recommend looking into some Pinterest art activities, because there's so many, and so many adapted ways of doing it as well. I like to also infuse, some of my sessions with opportunities for self-care for the individual. So, if that person, likes to have their nails done, or to have a hand massage done, for example, something to make them feel really pampered and at ease, perhaps doing their hair or dressing up in their favorite outfit, having a little fashion show or something like that, just something to make them feel special and empowered in themselves, and really at ease would be great. What else? Cooking and baking, of course, if that's something of interest to them. There are so many ways to involve someone in a cooking or baking task, whether that's putting in ingredients or rolling the dough. Anything like that can be really empowering to someone. And if there's someone that really likes to help out and be supportive, then perhaps there are other tasks throughout the house that might not seem recreational at first glance, but if that person really holds value in being useful and supportive and helpful, then there are some tasks that can be done throughout the house, and you can try to engage them in that way. I think reminiscence can be really powerful as well. So if you have photographs or journals or anything that you can look through with them, and kind of use that as a launch pad for having a reminiscence conversation about different memories and things like that. Or if it's someone who can't really engage verbally in that way, then perhaps going through some photographs and speaking out those memories with them or for them. Just a lot of different approaches in that sense. And if they're able to, see and engage with videos, then I know a lot of zoos are doing like virtual zoo tours online, which is lovely. National Geographic, there's a lot of travel videos you can do to provide kind of an immersive experience. I had a client, I remember, who used to be a pilot. And so I would always put on a video for him where it's filmed from the point of view of a pilot, and it feels kind of like you're flying an airplane. So, and that was really impactful for him. He felt like he was in the driver's seat again. So I'd encourage anyone to really just kind of dive deep into that person's interests and their path, and try to find ways to cater to those interests, and be creative and have some fun with it, because there's so many different options what you can do. I hope that
you definitely listed quite a few that even I haven't even considered. I think a lot of people will go to like the cooking and the arts and crafts, but going through journals and memories and those immersive activities, those are all really great ideas. And I think our caregivers and families that will be watching this interview can really take from that. I know I'm going to take from that and see what I can implement in our home, because there were some really great ideas there.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's hard to do like a big collection because everyone's so different, but I hope that gives just some tidbits.
Just a few little ideas of something, just to kind of, what you're saying, experiment, try things out and see what works. I think that'll really make a big difference, especially right now in this time.
Yeah. And I think an important thing to note too is that people's interests change.
Yeah.
So, if the caregiver is a family member that, may have a certain idea of what their loved one likes and what they have liked for a long time, maybe their interests have shifted a little bit. It's definitely valuable to try to explore new ideas and new interests as well, because there is the potential for engaging them in something they've never tried before or never had interest in before. So that can be a fun thing for both of you as well.
Most definitely, most definitely. So for anyone that's been listening to this interview and they're interested in learning more about rec therapy or connecting with you, how would they go about reaching you and getting a hold of you?
Sure. So I'm, would love to hear from anyone that has interest in recreation therapy or would like to learn more or is, interested in some support for their loved one. The best way is through my website. It's lifeinfull.ca. So lifeinfull.ca. I also have a direct email, lifeinfullca@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to hear from anyone who has interest. I did want to mention as well that my services are reimbursable through passport funding. So if anyone is receiving that funding, recreation therapy is under the umbrella of services that they can be reimbursed for.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that information. And thank you so much, Kim, for joining us today. This has been really great. Definitely a good conversation. I learned a lot more about rec therapy than I previously knew. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet with us.
Oh, Donnette, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's such a pleasure. And, if I can help in any way, just to encourage people to get creative and do some things they've not tried before at home during this very difficult time, then I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim.